9. Kimmy and Pagan. Kimmy continued to gaze at the contently sleeping, naked Pagan, laid on his chest in his bed. He began to get anxious about her waking. He was sober, hungover, and burnt out from the powders they'd shared together the night before, not in a state to have any real conversation. Yet he was also in a state of bliss at finding a girl he couldn't have dreamed of, sleeping with him in the nude. He was fretting, worried he'd be an awkward mess. So naturally, he reached into his bedside drawer, careful not to wake her, and pulled out a dented ounce of cocaine in a sandwich bag and his key. He quickly did a few blasts, the whole time careful not to break her sleep. It would be even more awkward for her to wake up to him blasting keys of coke. He dipped and sniffed, paused, then just one more, a good one. He had one more big blast and put it back into his bedside table. He knew he was developing a habit, but this was different. He just needed it to act like a real person in front of the girl of his goddamn dreams. Or what looked like it, at least. As he closed the drawer, Pagan began to turn. She popped her head up and opened her eyes upon Kimmy's face. Kimmy smiled. "Morning," he said, just a little too chipper. He needed to watch that. She smiled back and chuckled. "Hello, little baby," she said, squishing Kimmy's cheeks with her hand. She sat up, snorted, and held her hand to her head. "Oh God, I am wrecked." She sighed and fell back into the bed. Kimmy, you wouldn't have any more coke, would you?" She mumbled. "That was it. She's perfect. She loves drugs just like me. This is perfect. Yeah, for sure I do. You want some?" Pagan chuckled again and squirmed herself upright in the bed. No, baby, I need it." She let out a large yawn and a heavy sigh. She sniffed again, louder this time, more of a snort, kind of endearing. "God damn," she exclaimed, trying to open her eyes wide as possible and rubbing the sleep out of them. Kimmy smiled, chuckled, and tentatively pulled out the dented ounce of Charlie. Pagan did a double take at the sheer quantity in his drawer. "Jesus, doll, you really do have coke, huh?" She leaned her head back against the headboard. Someone has a problem," she said in a sing-song tone, chuckling, eyes still closed. "Oh no, I don't really, trust me. I just bought wholesale off Marcus when I came into some money, you know?" Her eyes opened and she kissed Kimmy on the cheek, grabbing the bag out of his hands. "Don't worry, baby. I don't judge." She clambered over the bed to grab her wallet and phone, wiggling her ass in Kimmy's face as she did. "No, you're just a fun guy, aren't you?" She leaned back into the bed and poured an indiscriminate amount of coke onto her phone screen, cutting up a very large line, much larger than Kimmy had expected. At this point, Kimmy was loaded from all the murders, so he could care less. "Right, yeah, right," he replied, watching her pull a note from her wallet, rolling it into a perfect rigid straw. He had no idea she was so adept at this. She'd seemed so innocent last night. Horny, but still innocent. I mean, she's 19? She bent down and railed the whole long line in one snort. "Woo," she exclaimed. "That is a lot better." She laughed and began straddling Kimmy. Kimmy was in awe. "Hey, how old are you again?" Pagan laughed. "Don't worry, baby. I'm 19. "Cool," Kimmy replied. "I mean in 3 years." "Fuck, what?" he stammered. Pagan stared into his eyes, a devilish grin on her face, letting her words hang in the air a little too long. Kimmy went to say something, but she giggled. "Kidding. No, I really am 19. Should have seen your face, boyo." She nuzzled her head back into his chest. "And how old are you? Can't believe I didn't ask last night. We didn't actually talk much, did we?" She laughed again. Kimmy laughed too. "Yenna, we were pretty ketted, I guess." True," Pagan exclaimed. "So much fun. What was it? Calvin Klein lines? Do it all the time?" "Haha, yeah, Calvin Klein's," Kimmy replied. He was comfortable now, but he could always be more comfortable. He poured himself a line on Pagan's phone, matching hers, which he wasn't sure was the best idea. But he wasn't going to get upstaged by a fucking teenager. He tried to rail it in one go, but couldn't, wincing as he railed it in two. "Jesus fucking Christ," he muttered, dazed. "Breakfast of champs, huh?" He whacked his head into the headboard. "Ah, poor baby," Pagan exclaimed, rubbing his head. "I think that was a bit much, huh?" Nah, I'm I'm good, baby. Trust. Woof. Okay. Did you want some actual food breakfast, bud? He asked in a genuine tone. I don't have anything here, but I can order some if you're hungry. Yeah, McMuffins, she replied, nuzzling back into his chest. What you mean, you came into some money? Sounds sus to me. She looked into Kimmy's eyes and smirked. Oh yeah, nah, no, Kimmy replied, racking his brain for an excuse. This chick might be cool, but she probably still wouldn't want to hang around someone who was effectively a paid serial killer at this point. Yeah, nah, my great aunt died. Left me a bunch of inheritance, that's all. The bitch was loaded. Divorced some CEO of a big company or something, I think. Pagan bought it. Oh, cool. A true gold digger. She laughed again. Kimmy swore he could listen to her laugh on repeat through headphones on a morning jog. It was intoxicating. Hope you don't mind me saying, she added politely. Yeah, nah, fuck her, Kimmy quickly replied. The two shared another bout of laughter. Pagan straddled Kimmy again. And how old are you then, doll? Kimmy was in awe. I'm 29. I see. Very nice, she replied. Jesus fucking Christ, he exclaimed. What? Pagan pouted. It's just like, damn, nah, you are for sure the hottest girl I've ever been with, I think. Like, ever. Kimmy laughed. Pagan smiled and squeezed her pierced tits together. Yeah, I've got nice tits, huh? She said proudly. Yeah, fucking yeah, yes, Kimmy replied. Feel them. She grabbed his hands and cupped them onto her breasts. The two started making out and ended up fucking over and over until 2 in the afternoon. Pagan stayed again that night and the night after. She only went home in the end because she felt bad for her cat, saying he really needed some food. Upon learning this, Kimmy felt bad for her cat too. They said their farewells, but promised to meet again later in the week. Once she'd left his apartment, Kimmy danced a victory dance and shadowboxed around the room for a good 10 minutes, thanking God for locking her down. He glanced at his once an ounce of coke on the table, now perhaps brought down to a quarter over the last few days with Pagan. Sarcastically, he exclaimed to no one in particular, yeah, right, I'm the one with the problem. He chuckled to himself, processing the quantity they'd gone through in disbelief now that he really observed what was left of the bag. Well, fuck it, he said, and invited Marcus over on the phone. 1, to get more coke, but 2, to rant to his best mate about how perfect this fucking girl was. Part 10. Wendy moves in. Wendy sat upon the scaffold and observed the slowly decomposing bodies that Cuthbert and Lumiere had left behind. She was too old and weak to move them, and the two had seemed to leave in a hurry. She sighed and walked to her office, packing a small suitcase with clothes and any essentials she'd need while separated from her botany equipment. She looked over at the many plant-based narcotics she had created and grown, stored in a drawer. She grabbed a nondescript bag of shredded plant matter, looking like an A3 sandwich bag of herbs, and muttered to herself, who knows, might need this. She packed the bag, leaving the rest of her botanical drugs behind. It was Wednesday. She had around 48 hours before the boss of the hippie gang would come for her. She was sure of it. She finished packing, then sat down to prepare a syringe and spoon. Filling the spoon with a small pile of ice and heroin, respectively, she softly sang Hot and Cold by Katy Perry while she mixed up the shot. She finished, drew it into the syringe, and promptly shot up in her right arm in the same spot she always did. As the effect spread, she stood in front of the mirror, raised her arms, and slowly brought them down to her sides. She sighed a satisfied sigh, put on a pair of Prada sunglasses, grabbed her suitcase, and walked to the garage of the grow house. She delicately stepped over the corpses of hippies, pulled the tarp off an old Harley-Davidson motorbike, grabbed the keys from a drawer, strapped her suitcase onto the back, and put on a helmet. Cuthbert had sent Lumiere's address to her in a text. She entered it into her Maps app. Good spot, she said to herself. Better not be a shithole. She opened the garage door, got onto the Harley, and revved the engine. Immediately, she powered down the dirt road into the valley, racing past tall trees and leaving the grow house behind. She reached the highway, sped down the road, overtook cars while doing wheelies, and laughed maniacally. After a few hours, she reached the outer suburbs of the city. She detoured down a dirt road filled with meteor craters to pay Davo and Cranford a visit. She cruised up to the luxury RV. Cranford, who had been napping on a fold-out chair, quickly stood up, then relaxed when Wendy removed her helmet. "Hiya, Cranford," she said cheerfully. "Wendy, hey, what are you doing here?" Cranford replied. "I'm on the run, mate," Wendy laughed. "Thought I'd stop by to see old Davo on my way to hiding out. By the way, how did that business go? Those men I sent to you, everything work out?" Cranford stammered. Yeah, well, was a bit sus on the fucking demon cunt, to be honest." "Fair enough, mate," Wendy replied. "That man looks like evil personified." Yeah. I mean, I shot him with my sawed-off. I was pretty scattered. Cunt scared the shit out of me. But it didn't do shit. He just got mad about his clothes, and he absorbed the shells into his body. Fucking crazy. Well then, there you go. This Lumiere is the real deal. And what about Cuthbert? Oh yeah. Nah, he was shit scared in his car till we went in the RV to meet Davo. Not Cuthbert too then, Wendy muttered. Seems about right. Let's say hi to Davo. Yeah, he's just cooking up in that tent, Cranford said, gesturing towards a large tent beside the RV. Wendy walked inside. Davo was carefully extracting crystals from a glass beaker, emptying liquid into a vat. "How are ya, big man?" Wendy called out. Davo swung his head back. "Wildcat! Wendy! How are ya, love? What are you doing around these parts?" "I'm on the run from the fucking hippies, wouldn't you know it? Gonna hide out somewhere in the city they can't find me. Thought I'd pay you a visit on the way." She smiled. "Well, you're in luck, love. I just extracted this batch of DMT as you've arrived. Derived it from meteor shower fragments," Davo said proudly. "Want a little bit for the soul?" he asked, opening his vape rig and stuffing it full of DMT. "Still on a vision quest, are we?" Wendy laughed. "Sure, why not? Let's feel the stars." She grabbed the vape rig, inhaled a large drag, and handed it back to Davo, who did the same. "You know me, Wildcat. The mystery is never solved. Answers feel as far away as ever," Davo muttered. "But this DMT might help. This meteor shower happened around the time a new genome was introduced to humanity. The leftover meteors are practically pure God particles at their core." He took another drag and handed the vape to Wendy. "Feel any more evolved?" Davo laughed. "This is good stuff, Davo," Wendy said after a few more drags. "Everything is much, much clearer." She paused. "I'm going to be staying with Lumiere, that demon man I sent to you for Molly. Apparently he lives in a huge luxury apartment in the city, so I'm hoping it'll be all right." "Be careful of that creature," said Davo in a solemn tone. "He knows not what he is or what he's done, and he's practically a god among men if he realizes his underlying power. This isn't likely. His amnesia made it so he didn't remember me either. I've worked with him before on various deals. Over the decades, he was one of my first customers in my 20s back in the 60s. Doesn't look a day different. But I remember he didn't have a great time one few couple of days in the 90s. I remember he doesn't want to be a killer, but know there is an eldritch monster lurking within him. He was the cause of an incident. To be honest, he saved me from life in prison. If not having had to have been by slaughtering an entire class of secret agent operatives to save his and my ass, I was just a pawn. There was an operation to capture him and extract his immortality. I think was their plan, but they awakened something in him. He tore an entire building of agents limb from limb with just his claws and teeth. I'll never forget all of that blood." Davo shuddered. "So you know this guy, huh?" "You got it. I'll look out for myself. I mean, that sounds terrifying, but he seems like a bit of a dunce to me. I think it should be fine," she said reassuringly. "I trust you, Wildcat, but I'd say look out for that Cuthbert character also. Perhaps, maybe even more. I get the sense he's trying to bring that very monster out of Lumiere for whatever reason, but I could be wrong," replied Davo. "Yeah, he definitely has some dark energy. He's half the reason I've got to go hide little fucking blighter," muttered Wendy. "This accommodation better fucking make something up to me, Davo, I tell ya." The two laughed and sat in the tent, vaping DMT for the next half hour. Cranford entered the tent and joined the two. Damn, Davo, good job. This is top notch, he said as he exhaled from the vape. He then turned to Wendy, and quickly his face went stark as though he'd seen a ghost. Wendy, your eyes? Your eyes, they're like that fucking demon cunts. I'm fucking tripping, fuck. Cranford stood up. I need to lie down. He walked into the RV. All right, David, I'd best be off. But thanks for the warning about our pal Lumiere, the man of the light. I'll be extra careful staying with him, said Wendy to Davo as she got back onto her Harley. Good one, Wildcat, I trust ya. Look after yourself. Wendy revved the bike and tore down the dirt road back onto the highway. Her vision filled with fractals and her mind flooded with various voices from some sort of entities from the meteor DMT. Jesus, that stuff is strong, she muttered as she powered back onto the highway. Another hour's travel and she arrived outside Lumiere's apartment. She took off her helmet and promptly rang the buzzer. Lumiere quickly answered through the speaker. There was a camera attached to the intercom. Wendy waved and lowered her sunglasses into the camera. Wendy! Exclaimed a more excited than Wendy had expected, Lumiere's voice through the speaker. I'm here with Cuthbert now. We've been waiting for you. Come up, please. There was a loud buzz, and the large steel door in the foyer slided open, revealing an elevator. Wendy went inside and pressed number 11, and thought about the incident Davo had mentioned before, and how she could get Lumiere's side, or if he would even remember. Wendy got to Lumiere's door, and knocked 3 times. The door opened, as she made the third knock. Wendy, how are ya? Here, let me take that, Lumiere said, trying to be a good host, grabbing Wendy's suitcase and placing it on the couch. Come in. Lumiere led Wendy inside, and Wendy began to scoff in disbelief at the opulence glancing at the marble fountain and large artworks across the room. How are you, love? Yelled Cuthbert from the kitchen and walked into the room. Well, here he is. Well, geez, Lumiere, I didn't expect you to be so, fancy, Wendy said in disbelief. Lumiere laughed, grinning, a large, toothy grin exposing all his needle teeth. Yeah, well, I've been here a while, I guess. Hey, gotta be nice, he said. Wendy blew raspberries, cupping the breast of a marble bust of a woman of Lumiere's as she observed the room. Bit of a show-off, aren't ya? She laughed, her vision still being flooded by fractals, and the marble bust appearing animated and trying to communicate with her in her vision, but she knew she was tripping. Oh man, I need to lie down, she exclaimed. Long trip. Of course, replied Lumiere, and led Wendy to an ornate, comfortable couch. Wendy fell into it, still tripping, and she couldn't remember ever feeling so comfortable. Jesus, mate, this is... She sighed into the furniture. This is very nice. And don't forget you two need to sort out getting everything from my office in this place. You've only got a day and a half to get it done, so get to it, boys. Of course, replied Cuthbert to Wendy. I've let my boy Marcus know, big strong lad. I told him to bring some strong, trustworthy hands along, and he'll be here very soon to grab Lumiere's van with some of his mates and get that for ya. Quick, smart, lovey, don't you worry, he said. I'm warning you, lads, if you fuck this up, I know bad people who will take pleasure in doing me all sorts of favors, which could be fucking both of your shits up completely for good. Don't fuck me, or this pretty place could go up in flames, all right? If Wendy stated calmly, noted. 100% love, we've got ya, exclaimed Cuthbert, quickly trying to reassure her. Here, let's have some of your lovely red beard while we wait. Cuthbert began rolling a big joint quickly, lit it, and passed it to Wendy. You can count on us, said Lumiere cheerfully. I appreciate the threats, though. Good stakes. Lumiere remarked. Yeah, right. All right then, replied Wendy. Lumiere turned on the TV, which started playing news coverage. Lumiere, Wendy and Cuthbert tuned in as they waited for Marcus and his mates. The local news was covering a grisly murder that had exposed a major child pornography ring in a prestigious suburb. The man murdered was on the front of the TV in clips and photos. It was Dimitri Masher. Hey, look, you famous, exclaimed Lumiere to Cuthbert and began laughing. Looks like the cops are looking for you, mate, but they have no idea what you look like or who you are. Good one, mate. The words "no witnesses" echoed in Cuthbert's head. Yeah, right. I don't want to hear this. Let's change it. Quickly interjected Cuthbert and grabbed the remote as the newscaster continued the story, stating, although many people online have been hailing this killer as a hero, we must remember the details and the fact that not one evil man, but also an innocent chai. Cuthbert changed the channel. What's all this about then? Asked Wendy, curious. Well, Wendy, Cuthbert found a new source of work on his phone. Our man is now not only a drug supplier, but a fucking assassin. Lumiere laughed. But nothing new for you, is it, old mate? Said Lumiere to Cuthbert. Cuthbert was sweating bullets at almost revealing his secret he wanted to keep from Lumiere. Right, mate, right? He stammered. Well, you did a good thing, mate, exclaimed Wendy. Good one. Ridding this earth of real scum. Good on ya! Cuthbert felt a huge wave of guilt overcoming him, remembering the small body crumpled to the floor. What's that she was about to say about a kid? Inquired Lumiere to Cuthbert. Ye fuck nah. I don't know, mate. There was a pause. Lumiere observed Cuthbert oddly, almost as if he already knew everything but had turned the other cheek. But Cuthbert knew he didn't know. You guys want coffee? He quickly stammered. Yeah, mate, sure, replied Lumiere casually. Why not? Said Wendy. Cuthbert walked into the kitchen. It was obvious Lumiere would find out naturally eventually, and he was dreading it. He began preparing coffee on Lumiere's large, ornate steel coffee machine. As he did, he got a call from Marcus. He picked it up. Hey, mate. Hey, I'm here with some mates. Kimmy and Pagan, who've come to help. All good if they come up? Asked Marcus. No worries, mate. Yeah, buzz up, replied Cuthbert. Marcus buzzed and let the trio up. All right then, very good, stated Wendy. Marcus, Kimmy, and Pagan stood together in silence in the elevator, Kimmy and Pagan holding each other at the waist. Marcus knocked, and Cuthbert answered the door. Hey, guys, come in. This is Wendy. He gestured to Wendy on the couch. You're going to be picking her stuff up tonight a little while out of town. All of it, stated Wendy bluntly. Kimmy introduced. Hi, I'm Kimmy. Pagan. Pagan added nervous at the sight of Lumiere, but also bewildered and amazed by his face, teeth, eyes, and demeanor, staring at him transfixed. Lumiere reached into a drawer and pulled out a set of car keys and tossed them to Marcus. Here's the keys to my van, mate. Should fit everything. Hey, cheer, replied Marcus. My name is Paul, stated Lumiere to the younger ones. And this, as you know, is Cuthbert. Wendy started scrawling a long list on the back of an envelope and handed it to Kimmy. You cunts cannot forget these specifically, or you fucked it. Kimmy glanced at the list. It was filled with chemical compounds and specific equipment. I don't know what half this shit is, replied Kimmy. Well, you'd better figure it out, replied Wendy, annoyed. All right, we got this, interjected Marcus and called Kimmy and Pagan to follow him to the garage. They got to the van. It was a slick new model, looked fresh from the dealership. Nice, exclaimed Marcus. Can I drive? I'm good, I promise, asked Pagan. Yay, sure, no problem, replied Marcus and tossed the keys to Pagan. The three got in the van and opened the garage door and entered in the coordinates. Here we go, said Kimmy, and they pulled out of the garage onto the main road, exactly like this. Part 11 retrieval. The three shared the aux cord in the van, blasting music with heavy bass through the new model van's impressive sound system. After the second hour, the music changed to long psytrance and drum and bass mixes. Here we go, said Pagan as she turned into the dirt road as heavy psytrance blasted through the speakers. Pretty sure this is the right one. They drove down the dirt road for a while and eventually made it to the huge warehouse building with only one large door and parked outside it. The door was left ajar with a pool of dried blood coming onto the outside cement from under the door. They got out of the van and entered cautiously. The power was out and it was practically pitch black, but Pagan quickly found the switchboard by the front door and turned on the generator, turning all the lights on at once, blinding the three and exposing the litter of slowly starting to decompose hippie corpses. Jesus fucking Christ, yelled Kimmy. Pagan let out a slight whimper and then aloud, what the fuck? These guys are fucking killers. They fucking killed all these people. She was in disbelief. I knew something fucking smelled cunt, exclaimed Marcus. Yeah, he said and paused. Probably Cuthbert A. He's Abbott fucking psycho, you know, Adlai. Like under the clean-cut, middle-aged cunt is a fucking cooked cunt, I tell ya. You don't think it could have also been the guy that literally looks like he was sprouted from hell? Pagan asked sarcastically as the three looked for Wendy's office. Kimmy looked up and noticed the red lights switched on the CCTV cameras. Boy, you guys think we should watch out for the cameras? He asked, nervous. Ah, fuck it, lad, replied Marcus. They're surely all dead anyway. Noon's watching Trust. Yeah, fucking for sure, yeah. Eatswa, I guess. They walked past the scaffolds and into the hallways, checking the different rooms for Wendy's office. Eventually, Pagan found it and called the two over. Wendy's office contrasted greatly with the rest of the facility. It looked loved and lived in. There was a double bed in the corner unmade, papers scattered everywhere, many large plastic containers filled with random plant matters, test tubes and organized storage of random botany shit. Marcus checked her bedside table and chortled, "This old bitch is fucking hecka's cunt. She a full fucking junkie. Ah, crazy." Kimmy inspected the drawer to see a treasure trove of addictive drugs scattered throughout the cupboard, but mainly two big sandwich bags. One filled with meth, the other with heroin. Marcus picked up her crack pipe and inspected it. Holy shit, cunt. There is so much gear in this pipe, bro. This is insane. The bitch must have melted a whole ball in this or something. The bulb of the pipe was expertly crystallized with a thick layer of meth coating the inside. Fuck, cunt. This is too perfect. I can't not have a little burl, said Marcus and pulled a lighter out of his bag and began smoking the pipe. Fuck, man. We said we weren't doing that shit no more, huh? Just the classy drugs, remember? Fuck's sake, all right. Pagan watched from the side in a daze. She hadn't seen much meth being smoked in real life. Marcus exhaled a large toxic cloud. Oof. And this gear is fucking crazy. What the fuck, cunt? Kimmy, mate, you gotta try this. I know you said whatever, but this is like Michelin star sun. He passed Kimmy the pipe and Kimmy took it, then turned to Pagan and said, "For real, babe, I've kicked this shit. I was into it for a bit, but I just do a little coke, and that at clubs nowadays. I'm being real. But will you care if I hit this? Or?" Pagan truly couldn't care less. In fact, the activity happening around her excited her, but she feigned a belligerent. "Well, you probably shouldn't, but do what you need to do. I'm gonna start packing what looks like it's more expensive into the van, I guess." She looked at Kimmy and smiled, then began gathering bits of jewelry, designer clothes, and anything that looked important or expensive. She brought as much as she could in a large pile in her hands, through the hallways, past the scaffolds, and into the van. Kimmy and Marcus sat on Wendy's bed, going back and forth, powering through the loaded pipe. Kimmy coughed his guts up and struggled to inhale. "All right, gotta stop now, cunt. I can't fucking breathe. We can take it with us, come on." Marcus exhaled his burl and replied, "Yay, Eatswa. But goddamn, did that freshen me up, bruzzy? Ha ha, woohoo, I feel good," exclaimed Kimmy. "I know what you..." Marcus brought his face inches from Kimmy's and shrieked, "Mean cunt," and laughed maniacally, dancing around the room. He then inspected the list. "All right, well, equipment then, mate. Let's get the big shit on first. All these fucking machines." The two began carrying large bits of equipment through the building and into the van, Kimmy growing more and more paranoid about the cameras following them around the room. "Jesus Christ, cunt. These cameras are watching us. Let's get this done quick as fuck. I don't want some dogs rocking up, yay?" he stated, slightly nervous. "Let's fucking go!" exclaimed Marcus, and put his meth-powered energy to work, as did Kimmy. After half an hour, they had loaded all the large equipment into the van, and Pagan had carefully brought everything they could have missed, like documents, various Ziploc bags filled with different matters made of who knows what, test tubes, etc. Kimmy brought the last load into the van where Pagan and Marcus were waiting. "Well, that's everything except the bed," said Kimmy. "Should be good, right?" "Yeah, she'll be right, mate," replied Marcus. The three got in the car. Pagan plugged her phone into the aux and scrolled looking for a song. She looked over at the two wired out of their minds and laughed. "Oh, I know." She put on Meth Psychosis by Dead City and began fanging it down the dirt road, screaming, "Whoa, Mission accomplished. Trying to match their energy. Fuck yeah, the two retorted. The next hour of their drive, more music like Dead City blasted through the speakers, turnstile and suicidal tendencies. Through the noise, Marcus noticed they had started being followed by two men on black, sleek sports bikes with long dreads flapping through the air from under their helmets. He turned off the stereo and stammered quickly. Fuck cunt, they're gaining on us. I'm pretty sure they're fucking, oh fuck cunt. Fucking hippies, said Kimmy calmly, but uneased at the development. Want me to keep going exactly like this? Read back. Part 12, Highway Hippies. Kimmy pulled out his trusty 9mm Glock he bought off a random 17-year-old dealer months ago, shortly after finding out about Didi Moncler out of his inside coat pocket. Jesus, Kimmy, you had a gun this whole time? Exclaimed Pagan, shocked. Well, aren't you glad now, babe? Asked Kimmy calmly. Pagan blew raspberries as she floored it down the empty bush highway, with only them and the two motorcycle hippies making headway on them. Kimmy opened his window and leant out the side of the car, aiming his gun at the target. As the bike approached, the rider pulled an assault rifle out of the back and stood on top of the bike as it flew down the highway like a seasoned trick rider. He took aim at Kimmy and started to open fire, sending a hailstorm of bullets towards the van. Jesus fucking Christ! Screamed Kimmy and jumped back in the van. Pagan had to make a turn and was going too fast. She slid heavily against the guardrail, causing sparks to fly out. Kimmy looked down at his shoulder and noticed a pool of blood forming. Jesus fuck! They got me! He screamed. Fuck that cunt! He screamed in rage. He wasn't used to people fighting back. All his Didi Moncler kills had been quick and clean. Hey, the bullets aren't breaking the glass. They're just bouncing off. Fuck yes! Paul, you sick cunt! The car's fucking bulletproof! Exclaimed Marcus, slightly relieved. We still need to take them out, said Kimmy. They can't know where Wendy is, remember? And also, fuck these cunts! Kimmy screamed in anger, the pain slowly growing through the adrenaline. The second bike pulled up next to the van, and the rider began bashing the door handle with a hammer. Fuck that! Exclaimed Marcus, and opened the side door, yanking the rider off his bike by the neck, throwing him into the inside wall of the van. He yanked his helmet off, and Kimmy promptly shot a bullet through his head, splattering brains onto the door. Kimmy opened the door the hippie's body had landed against, and it tumbled onto the highway. Pagan stared at Kimmy, horrified at how swiftly and easily he had just slaughtered a man, but quickly put her attention back onto the highway. It was merging onto a larger multi-lane highway with cars littered across it. Pagan did her best to veer around the cars and dodge the hippie's bullets. The hippie sped his bike in front of the van and stood on top of his bike, turning around as it kept driving. He stood towards the van and began open firing at the windshield. Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck! Screamed Pagan. The glass was bulletproof, but couldn't take much more heavy gunfire and was beginning to crack. Pagan promptly rammed into the bike, and the rider expertly parkoured off the bike, landing on the bonnet of the van. He reloaded, preparing to shatter the windshield. Fuck this cunt! Shouted Kimmy. He leant out the side window again and grabbed one of the hippie's long, manky dreadlocks, yanking him off the bonnet. His helmet slid against the tarmac, making sparks as Kimmy held him by the dreadlock and emptied his clip into the helmet, then let go, leaving the corpse on the side of the highway. The three of them began cheering. Fuck yes! Thank fuck! Until they realized every other person in their cars was staring at them. Pagan quickly made a detour down a random dirt road and drove for a good 10 minutes somewhere hidden. We need to hide just for a minute. A fuck ton of people just saw that, Kimmy, shouted Pagan, exasperated. But goddamn, thank you for not letting us die just now, she stammered, beginning to cry and laugh with joy. You are a real G, my bro, said Marcus to Kimmy. Hey bro, you clocked the first one. We'd be fucked without you, exclaimed Kimmy. The three waited it out on the bush road till early in the morning, then began to drive back. Cuthbert had called to check what was taking so long. They explained the situation, and Cuthbert was understanding and thankful they had no witnesses to where they were going. They arrived back at Lumiere's garage. Kimmy Kimmy and Marcus had been getting back on the pipe in the back of the van whilst Pagan drove, mainly out of stress. As Pagan parked, she decided to say, "Hey, save me a little." "Fuck no," exclaimed Kimmy. "I don't want to get you into this shit, baby, trust me. You'd rather just never touch it." "I've had a stressful fucking night just like you," she stated. "Now hand it over." Marcus shrugged and handed her the pipe and lighter. "Well, you're getting the most Mickey fucking gear ever for your first time, which is a plus." Marcus laughed. Kimmy winced as Pagan took the pipe to her lips and started breathing in the smoke. She exhaled and said, "Oh wow, maybe you were right, Kimmy." She convulsed to the wave of dopamine flooding her brain. She said in a sing-song tone, "This might be a problem, but for now that's neither here nor there." And she proceeded to keep smoking. "Fuck it," said Kimmy meekly, and the three stayed in the van till the pipe was emptied. Then they went and knocked on Lumiere's door. Lumiere opened it. "You're back," he exclaimed. "I'll wake the others up." He had been chain smoking the whole night, sat in a corner of the living room. There was a large pile of butts on the floor, and the apartment brutally stank of cigarette smoke. "You really like smoking, huh?" asked Pagan, shocked but softly. "Passes the time," Lumiere replied bluntly, and ushered the three into the living room where Cuthbert and Wendy were beginning to wake up. Wendy yelled out, half asleep, "You got my shit?" "We got it," the three exclaimed. "Thank God," said Wendy, burying her face in the pillow. She muttered, "Lovely, good business." Part 13, Graveyard Picnic. A few weeks had passed since Cuthbert's unlucky contract. He had been following the family's movements online since the murder. They were a wealthy elite breed of people and were regularly covered by tabloids. Cuthbert was looking at an article and found out the location of the unlucky child's grave. "Well, better pay my respects," he said to himself. Cuthbert didn't think of the child often, but when he did, it tied knots in his stomach. He had never killed a child before. He had been on missions in the past for the Secret Service, where he saw the death of children, but had always tried to be the voice of reason. But it would appear in his old age, his morality had faltered somewhat. Cuthbert decided to have lunch by the child's grave in some attempt to atone and pay his respects. He brewed coffee in his new apartment kitchen in Lumiere's building and poured it into a thermos and packed a blanket into a reusable shopping bag and made his way to the graveyard. He stopped by a Vietnamese bakery and bought a banh mi with no salad and walked solemnly into the graveyard. Part 14, Pagan and Macy. Pagan left Lumiere's apartment feeling accomplished. She caught a bus from Lumiere's apartment to near her and her closest friend and housemate, Macy's apartment, above a toy store on the main shopping strip of their suburb. Macy was 12 years older than Pagan and had known her for 4 years. They'd met while Macy was volunteering for a youth center and shelter, and she decided to take her in to live with her at 15, as she was a runaway from an abusive, hyper-religious environment where she had been staying before. Macy had become a prominent figure among Australian adult entertainment in recent years. With the rise of OnlyFans, she was a semi-famous cam model before this. She filmed and edited herself and created with various other performers. She had a large social media following and would also do things like Twitch streams, TikTok lives, and Instagram lives, but mainly regularly did cam shows online to farm money from her followers. Before leaving Lumiere's apartment, the group had been celebrating at Lumiere's apartment and had been overindulging in Wendy's drug collection. Pagan left the apartment in a daze under the influence of 5 different drugs: alcohol, methamphetamine, ketamine, MDMA, and mushrooms. She still had a lot of energy, but her thoughts were scattered as she stumbled into their apartment. She could hear the faint sounds of Macy performing a cam show in her room and tiptoed to her door and watched her perform through the crack in the door. Macy was nude, feeling herself up and thanking tippers as her door creaked open to reveal a drug-addled Pagan stumbling in, falling onto her knees, gawking at Macy in a drug-addled state, staring at her tits, almost drooling. "Oh, hey, babe, you all right?" asked Macy, temporarily wrapping herself in a silk robe, seeming genuinely concerned. Pagan crawled closer and mumbled, "Holy shit, you're so fucking hot. Your tits are incredible." She tentatively started putting out her hand to feel Macy's breast. Macy was taken aback. She'd never received this sort of energy from Pagan before. Yeah, but as she saw the flood of comments urging the development further, she played along with Pagan in her drug-addled state. Yay? Macy asked Pagan softly. You like him? She leant over and whispered in Pagan's ear, Holy shit, you're getting me so many tips. Keep this up, babe. Pagan moaned and began kissing Macy's neck and buried her face in her huge tits. Oh, wow, exclaimed Macy. You guys like that? She asked her audience, as a sea of dings came through her speakers, marking a lot of tips. All right, I guess we can do this, sighed Macy, as Pagan desperately sucked on her nipples and held her. Just this once. Macy pinned Pagan to the bed and pulled her hoodie and fishnet shirt off and took off her bra. Pagan stared at her, bewildered and insatiable, playing with her tits while pinned and creeping her hand towards Macy's groin. Macy pulled off Pagan's leggings and buried her face into Pagan, and Pagan yelped in satisfaction, arching her head back. There you go, laughed Macy as she tracked the many tips and comments coming into her account. The two continued for a long time as Pagan had a lot of energy from the amphetamines, and towards the end she began to sober up and realize what she was doing, but didn't seem to mind and continued a little longer. They finished, and Macy concluded the stream. Thank you so much for all the tips, guys. I'll see you soon, she said and closed the laptop. Pagan was puffed out and staring at the roof, contemplating what she'd done. Macy lay back with her and asked, Was that all right? Macy looked Pagan in the eyes. For you, I really wasn't expecting that from you, but you're the reason we're now a lot closer to buying a place now. She pinched Pagan's cheeks. Pagan sighed. Yeah, it's fine. I don't care. I'm just thinking about Kimmy. I doubt he's gonna be okay with this. I don't know what came over me. I just saw you on cam when I got home and couldn't help myself, and Macy cut her off. Don't worry, darling. It's our little secret. Your new little boyfriend doesn't need to know anything about it. Pagan sighed heavily. Yeah, I guess you're right, and I'm glad I helped with the tips and stuff. Great, replied Macy. You want something to eat? Meanwhile, Cuthbert closed the laptop he'd been using, just going to laugh. After saving the clip he'd screen recorded of his favorite cam girl with Pagan, the girl he'd recently met with Marcus and Kimmy. I'll keep this aside just in case, he thought to himself. Who would have thought that little mink? Part 15. Cranford chases a cat. Davo had put Cranford on a mission to find more pieces of meteorite with organic compounds that he could extract the crystal DMT from. The two of them had been binging the DMT since its creation, and while both were teetering on the edge of reality, Cranford was far worse off. Davo, despite his age, managed to keep himself more composed. They'd already sold a few hundred grams of the half-kilo Davo had made to reliable customers. Wendy had even stopped by to buy a little. They had parked further up the dirt red road, deep in isolation, at the base of one of the largest craters, as big as a football field. Cranford climbed out and began searching the open bush for meteorite fragments with organic compounds. As he hauled himself up the crater's edge, a flash of multicolored light caught his eye. A slick, iridescent cat sat there, cleaning itself, its fur glowing like an aurora. Holy she! Cranford stammered. The cat froze, then bolted. No, wait! Wait! Cranford yelled, scrambling over the edge of the crater and running after it. The glowing light from its tail burned in his vision as he pushed through the bush. He chased it for hours, stumbling from the barren bushland into marshland. The ground squelched beneath his boots, the air thick with the scent of rot and stagnant water. Flickers of light appeared in the corner of his eye, guiding him deeper into the marsh. Dolls began to appear, tied with ropes and hanging from the trees. Their hollow eyes stared blankly, and symbols painted across their faces seemed to writhe in the dim light. Circles of meteorite fragments, stripped of organic matter, surrounded piles of bones at the base of the trees. Some piles held fresh carcasses, their decay filling the air with a sickly sweetness. Letters carved into bark spelled DMG, while spray-painted phrases on boulders screamed warnings and promises. Didi Moncler is online. The time to rise is nigh. Cranford's confusion deepened as he stumbled through the forest, chasing the cat's glowing form as it darted ahead. He followed a river, its slow-moving water reflecting flickers of light, until he reached an overgrown forest. The shrines grew more frequent and grotesque, with rotting carcasses placed in the centers of meteorite circles. The trees were crowded with hanging dolls, their ragged limbs swaying in the still air. Cranford thought he'd caught the cat a few times, but it always pounced away, blinding him with its light. Desperate, he climbed the branches of a tall tree, searching for any sign of it. Through the canopy, he spotted a glint of light reflecting off a rusted water tank in the distance. The structure loomed, streaked with grime and overgrown with vines, as though waiting for him. Cranford walked toward the water tank, his breath heavy in the humid air. As he did, a figure caught his eye. A bearded man in tattered robes, crouched near a meteorite circle. Cranford froze. The man held a lamb, its throat already slit, blood spilling into a crude bowl at his feet. Above him, a doll hung from a tree, writhing savagely as if it were alive, its hollow eyes fixed on the ritual below. Cranford crouched behind a tree, careful not to disturb the scene. He watched in horrified silence as the man decapitated the lamb, its blood spraying in violent arcs. The man dipped his fingers into the bowl and painted the doll with cryptic symbols in a frenzy. The doll's convulsions grew wilder, its head jerking as if choking. Cranford's stomach twisted. The doll's mouth opened, radiating a harsh, unnatural light. With a violent heave, an iridescent cat clawed its way out of the doll's mouth, landing in the circle of meteorites. The doll fell limp. The man moved quickly, painting a blood-red circle around the meteorites as the cat hissed and growled. Its cries boomed like thunder, splitting Cranford's ears. Light shot upward from the circle in a twisting cylinder, filling the forest with sickly hues. Cranford clutched his head, the sound unbearable. The light turned to flame, a column of fire stretching to the sky. The man began to laugh, dancing wildly in the inferno's glow. But then the flames cracked and popped, exploding outward in a fiery mushroom cloud. Cranford dove to the ground as heat seared the air, narrowly avoiding the flames. He scrambled to his feet, coughing as smoke and ash filled his lungs. The fire died as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind a strange silence. The cat emerged from the rubble, dim and unimpressed. It let out a dissatisfied meow and sauntered toward the water tank, ignoring Cranford entirely. Cranford turned to the man. He was slumped against a tree, blood pooling around him. His eyes were milky white, his teeth sharp. "You see them too?" the man rasped, his voice oddly kind. Then louder, "Beware, Didi Moncler is online. Praise DMG." His head slumped forward, lifeless. Cranford stared at the body. "There's more than one cunt," he muttered. The cat's light flickered ahead, drawing him toward the water tank. Cranford tore through meteor circles and dolls and made it to the rusted water tank. It was covered in freshly painted, ornate, complex, demonic calligraphy, a sentence wrapping around the tank in huge letters almost illegible. Cranford studied it intently and made out what it said as he walked around. "Didi Moncler is online," he muttered. Suddenly, the aurora-like lights appeared at the top of the water tank. The cat was sitting there, taunting him with annoyed meows that hit Cranford in his chest like heavy bass. "Fuck this," Cranford muttered to himself and began climbing the ladder to the top. He got to the top and couldn't see the cat and went inside the water tank. The water tank floor was packed with meteor fragments piled on top of one another. The cat was now sat in the center of the tank on the tallest pile. These fragments were covered in a sort of glowing, iridescent, shifting color. Unbelievably thick moss covered the meteor fragments in the center. The cat was cleaning itself and seemed not to notice Cranford. Cranford skulked up to the cat. He was about to grab it. This was it. He could finally hold the cat. But as his hands touched the light, it dissipated into nothing, revealing the glowing, mossy meteorite fragments. Cranford realized that he had found what he was looking for, and in surplus. Cranford stuffed all his pockets with glowing meteor in his bag and left the tank with an armful of them, spilling as he made the long way back to the RV. Grabbing a cryptic, blood symbol-covered doll, he stuffed it in his bag. He arrived back to the RV and woke up Davo, shaking him relentlessly. "We're set, mate. We're set for days. You won't believe what I saw," exclaimed Cranford. Davo Davo yawned and said, "Oh, good you found some," unaware of the quantity. Cranford began ranting about the iridescent cats and the mysterious bearded blood wizard, apparently summoning them with animal sacrifices. He showed Davo the doll, which sent a shiver down his spine, but Davo still chalked it up to, "Were you puffing that vape the whole time, mate? You know this stuff will make you see shit. Stuff that was never there," he said, tired and bluntly. But doll!" exclaimed Cranford. "Fucking kids! Crazy!" remarked Davo, unsure how to reconcile with the creepy blood-covered doll. Cranford was flabbergasted and began questioning his own sanity. Part 16, Kimmy's Contracts. Kimmy tore open the box on his bed, grinning as the sleek drone caught the light. He turned it on, and the quiet hum filled his room as it hovered above his head. "Perfect," he muttered, watching it glide before landing it gently beside him. He leaned over to his laptop, the screen glowing with blueprints for a pistol-mounted rig. Kimmy followed the instructions carefully, hands steady, heart quick. An hour later, the drone sat armed and rigged, connected to an app on his phone. The screen buzzed again. Didi Moncler notification, time to act. A nearby contract. Local supermarket, barely a Minimart. Kimmy unhooked the pistol from the drone rig, patting it fondly. "Soon. Pet," he muttered. He slipped the gun into his coat pocket, grabbed the blacked-out motorcycle helmet, and stepped out of his apartment. The target was 300 meters away. Kimmy kept his pace even, helmet under his arm, until he neared the Minimart's entrance. At 20 meters, he slid it on and adjusted the visor. Black glass reflected nothing but cold resolve. Inside, Kimmy walked fast but deliberate, consulting the baseball card on his phone. Kaylin Woods. 26. Face. Gel-spiked hair, bad acne, crooked nose. Crimes. Selling drugs to kids. Cutting with synthetics. Overcharging addicts. Clothes. Striped black and red polo. Baggy gray pants. Air Max 90s. White and gold DC cap backwards. Kimmy found him in the soda aisle, the cap an easy target. Kimmy stopped, raised the gun, and aimed at the DC logo dead center. Kaylin turned, eyes going wide. What the fuck, man? He lunged, hands scrambling for Kimmy's gun. Kimmy fired. A crack. A thud. Kaylin crumpled, blood darkening his striped polo. The store erupted. Shouts, screams, carts crashing. Kimmy turned and briskly jogged out, ignoring the chaos. In a tucked-away park, zigzagged by streets, he reached a playground under a massive tree. Calmly, Kimmy stripped off the helmet and dumped it with his blood-smeared clothes into his bag. A clean outfit went on. Casual. Forgettable. His phone buzzed. Didi Moncler notification. "Congratulations, Kimmy. $30,500 has been transferred to your account." Kimmy sighed, eyes narrowing at the screen. It wasn't enough. Scrolling through contracts, he picked another. A car park hit later that night. Another dealer. Higher up. A trafficker. Kimmy slid the phone into his pocket and walked home, the weight in his chest growing heavier. Later that night, Kimmy entered the dimly lit car park, phone in hand. The Didi Moncler app displayed the license plate, James Carver. Kimmy stalked between rows of cars, pausing when he found the black sedan. He reached into his bag and pulled out a thin steel bar. With a quick shunk, he slid it through the window seam and popped the lock. The backseat door clicked open, and Kimmy slipped inside, tucking himself into the shadows. He waited. The silence stretched on for 90 minutes, broken only by distant footsteps and the hum of fluorescent lights. Kimmy's breathing stayed measured, eyes fixed on the car's dashboard, his hand resting on the pistol in his coat. Finally, footsteps. The driver's side door opened, and James Carver slid in. The app profile matched. Mid-length wavy brown hair, clean-cut, expensive suit. Carver didn't see Kimmy, too focused on starting the engine. The ignition turned. The engine rumbled. Kimmy raised his gun and fired. One shot. It punched through the headrest, through Carver's skull, and shattered the windshield with a faint, hollow crack. Carver slumped forward against the wheel. Kimmy stayed still, listening. No screams. No footsteps. Just the dull buzz of the car park lights. He waited 5 minutes, a deliberate count in his head, before easing the backseat door open. He slipped out, calm and quick, and jogged toward the exit. His phone buzzed. Didi Moncler notification. "Congratulations, Kimmy. $5,000 has been transferred to your account." Kimmy glanced at the screen and let out an annoyed exhale. It still wasn't enough. Didi Moncler had stopped listing bounty amounts. Now it was guesswork, and Kimmy had to gamble on bigger targets. He scrolled through the app, swiping past less low-level contracts until one caught his eye. CEO of a local conglomerate. Exploiting workers. Golf trip tomorrow. Kimmy muttered under his breath, his lips curling slightly. Yeah, perfect. He accepted the contract. The next morning, Kimmy parked near the edge of a sprawling golf course beside a Hungry Jack's. His drone sat armed and ready in the back seat. Kimmy set it on the ground, powering it up with his phone. Inside Hungry Jack's, Kimmy ordered a large double Whopper meal and sat near the window. One hand directed the drone through the air, the other lazily shoving fries into his mouth. The second phone displayed Jonathan Irvine's location. The CEO, slicked back black hair, sharp black suit. Kimmy's drone buzzed above the greens, zeroing in. 200 meters. Irvine planted his tee, placing a golf ball and practicing his swing. Kimmy guided the drone 15 meters overhead, eyes focused, thumb hovering. Irvine took his final swing, the ball soaring. Kimmy bit into his burger. His thumb pressed fire. The drone dropped low, 2 meters, a single shot cracking through the morning air. The bullet punched into Irvine's skull mid-swing. His body jolted, momentum carrying him forward as he collapsed face down into the grass, golf club spinning into the air. Kimmy's drone buzzed quietly back, unnoticed, gliding to the Hungry Jack's parking lot. Yes, cunt! Kimmy exclaimed, loud enough to startle the cashier, who gave him a look. Kimmy laughed, grabbed his food, and packed the drone back into his car. His phone buzzed. Didi Moncler notification. Congratulations, Kimmy. $9,500 has been transferred to your account. Kimmy exhaled deeply, satisfied. That's better. He powered onto the highway, the drone humming softly in the backseat. Part 17, Lumiere's first contract. Lumiere had grown curious about Didi Moncler after seeing Cuthbert's fame on the news and had asked Cuthbert to set it up on his phone. Cuthbert obliged and installed it onto his phone and made him an account. Lumiere sat in a dimly lit attic room in his apartment, looking out a large window out towards the city. He opened Didi Moncler on his phone, and the same game that Cuthbert had brought for him to play earlier loaded. Poorly animated knights, creatures, and dragons. He created an avatar and gave it his same white hair and gray skin. He opened the game and knew exactly what to do due to finishing his objective last time. He sat intently grinding and powering through the game the whole night for hours till the sun was coming up, chain smoking the entire time in the attic room. He eventually reached level 12 as the day started. He noticed the game was beginning to glitch out a lot, the screen decaying into sprawling waves of pixels, the color of gas on the pavement shining in the light, and he'd have to reload the app. Eventually, as his level marker reached level 13, his phone started spouting nonsensical text in some sort of factory mode, which eventually asks the sentence, "Will you pick mercy?" over and over, and a yes and a no button popped up. Lumiere thought about it for a second. He had originally not been sure which path to follow, but figured mercy was as good as one as any, and probably the most noble sounding at least. Lumiere pressed yes, and the phone app took on the functional AI assistant app model with different tabs and menus, a rich yellow border around a black screen with white text. He had skipped the choosing phase, and the contracts were being shown straight to him. Lumiere felt a little robbed of not being able to choose, and he didn't know why it was treating him differently. Nevertheless, Lumiere scrolled through the app, and most of the contracts he was being shown were assisted suicide contracts that had somehow been issued by those asking for help. He pressed on a random one as they all had a similar title. This one read, Elderly Widow, Untreatable Cancer, and Chronic Untreatable Emphysema, Asking for Release. He looked at her baseball card, and she looked like a sweet old lady. Lumiere thought to himself. Guess I can help her out. Lumiere accepted the contract and opened the navigation tool to show where she was. She was in a nearby nursing home a few suburbs away. At that moment, it was around 10 a.m. Lumiere heard a thud at the front door and went down from the attic to investigate. He got into the main room and saw a burly man dressed in a sharp black suit with black hair in a crew cut, wearing speed dealer sunnies, perusing through his things and snooping around, scoping out the place, holding what looked like a wrapped present. The man noticed Lumiere. Lumiere asked, "Who are you?" Bewildered, confused. "Oh, hey, mate. I'm Cuthbert's friend Winston. I showed him the app. Looks like he showed it to you, too?" Winston asked, glancing at Lumiere's phone. "How did you know?" Lumiere asked meekly. "I work for an agency who helped make this app," began Winston. "But in reality, we don't know where it came from. It just showed up as if out of nowhere, with a complete catalog of everyone alive and their good and bad deeds, and their suffering." "Right, their suffering," Lumiere replied, trying to follow along with Winston, acknowledging him, hinting at choosing the mercy path. "Yeah, sure. I know who you are," said Lumiere. "Cuthbert mentioned you when he first showed me the app. Bit rude to break into someone's place, though, mate. How did you even get in here?" "I hacked your elevator," replied Winston. "But I had to. I had to bring you a welcome gift, personally," he said, brandishing the box in gift wrap. Lumiere was taken aback and didn't think to be suspicious of Winston for some reason. He had a sort of charm that was hard to look past. Lumiere grabbed the box from Winston and unwrapped it. It was a wooden box expertly whittled and carved. Lumiere opened it and it was filled with what looked like premium cigars. "Oh, nice!" exclaimed Lumiere. "What do you say we have one now?" said Winston, and pulled a cigar from his coat pocket and began lighting it. Winston prompted Lumiere to try a cigar, and Lumiere obliged, lighting the cigar and exhaling. It felt very strong. The two sat and smoked together, talking about nothing and nonsense till the cigars were smoked. It felt like Winston was filling in time. He really just wanted to see Lumiere smoking the whole thing. As Winston left, he said, "Hey, enjoy those cigars." "Yeah, will do," replied Lumiere. He was beginning to get a little lightheaded in a way he didn't recognize, but thought nothing of it. The next day, Lumiere paid a visit to the woman's nursing home. Her name was Dolores Leslie. She was 85 years old and in great pain constantly. Lumiere got in the building easily enough and asked at reception where to find her. He had a bag with him and had brought a cocktail of Wendy's drugs with about a gram of heroin therein. He was sure what he'd mixed into this syringe would kill any human so long as they weren't addicted to opioids, theoretically. But also send them off in style and comfortably. He had also brought a silenced Desert Eagle, just in case. He got into her room after wandering for a long time through seas of doors to little rooms. Lumiere entered her room and walked slowly up to where she sat in a recliner, moaning in pain and struggling to breathe. Dolores looked at Lumiere and asked, "Is it you? Are you an angel?" Lumiere laughed, took her arm and grabbed the syringe from his bag. "Something like that," he replied solemnly, and stuck the needle in her vein and pulled back the blood and very slowly began pushing the shot in. "Oh, that's lovely," sighed the woman, slumping back into her chair as Lumiere kept pushing it in. He had melted quite a large amount out of a bag that read Meteor DMT into the shot, and he could see it taking effect. Dolores' once barely open eyes shook open, pupils entirely dilated. The woman mumbled, "Oh, I've never felt like this in my life," staring at Lumiere in awe. Lumiere looked back at her understandingly and pushed the rest of the shot in. The woman's head slumped over into her chest, lifeless. Lumiere brushed his hands. "That's that," he said, and packed up his bag and began to turn to leave when he noticed fragments of light emerging from the woman's chest, as though she were leaking it. Not shortly after, a crack in her chest down to her navel opened up, releasing blinding iridescent light. Lumiere kept his eyes open through it, and as the light came down, he saw the head of a cat made of light like an aurora poking out the crack, and then its body and legs coming out. The cat irradiated the room, causing patterns and light fragments to bounce around. Lumiere was dumbfounded. "What are you?" he asked the cat. The cat stared at him with intelligent eyes and sauntered out the room into the hallway. Lumiere sat in the room in shock and awe for a moment, then ran to check the cat walking down the hallway, but it had disappeared. Lumiere walked home feeling accomplished, as though he'd done something good. As he walked, he lit up one of the cigars he had brought with him and began smoking it, and became more and more lightheaded. He became more lightheaded than he could ever recall being, and fell to the floor, clutching the ground and heaving. He didn't understand. He'd never felt this feeling before. He'd never thrown up. In a flash, Lumiere spluttered and began to spew black ink-colored bile onto the ground in short, slow bursts. The black bile was filled with feathers and disconnected, broken parts of eyeballs strewn about throughout it. Lumiere stopped vomiting and shrieked in horror at what had just happened and at the bile on the ground. Later, Winston reported back to his superior in his agency, Malachi. "It's looking good, sir. Target successfully intercepted and following the mercy path as planned," said Winston, reporting to Malachi. "Wonderful. Let's see how long it takes the immortal to unravel and show his secrets." For Part 18, Davo Cranford move in. Davo and Cranford sat at a local service station's kebab stand. Cranford munched into potato cakes and dim sims from the Bain Marie in the service station with glee, while Davo ate an open falafel kebab on a styrofoam plate. Cranford was still muttering about the iridescent cats and weird bearded men in tattered robes in the woods, but Davo wasn't having a bar of it. "I'm telling you, Davo, I know what I saw," muttered Cranford. Yeah, sure, mate," replied Davo meekly, biting into his plastic fork of falafel. The two wrapped up, and Davo said, "All right, let's get back to the RV." And they drove down the highway back to the RV. As they drove, they noticed pickup trucks speeding down the highway with long dreads flapping through the windows, powering past them on the other side of the highway, blasting folk music. "Fucking hippies," muttered Davo. "I fucking hate hippies, cunt," retorted Cranford. They drove down the red road past the craters up to the RV. The RV was fucked. Davo and Cranford had gotten robbed and were not sure what to do or who did it. They suspected the hippies, but had no proof apart from a stench of essential oils through the vehicle. They wondered what to do and where to go. Cranford muttered as they sat together by the meteor craters, defeated. "How about that Lumiere cunt? He helped Wendy. Maybe he can help us?" Davo perked up. You might be right, Cranford." And he grabbed his phone and searched through it for Lumiere's number. Davo dialed Lumiere's number, and it rang until almost the last ring, until Lumiere answered the phone with a somewhat bewildered and confused, "Hello, Davo? What do you need, mate?" Davo felt a bit uncomfortable talking to Lumiere at all, even over the phone, but Cranford urged him, "Come on, ask him." And Davo began to stammer. "Paul, hey mate, listen, me and Cranford, we've run into some trouble. See, our RV got hijacked by some hippies, and Lumiere interrupted abruptly. "Fucking hippies. How can I help?" he asked. Davo was relieved he seemed open to helping them and asked, "Well, listen, we need a place to stay, and I know Wendy's camped out there with you, so you know. Would there be any chance the two of us could maybe?" Lumiere answered, "You're welcome to stay. I have so much space, and having Wendy here has really made things less mundane, you know? Come, you're welcome." In the background, Wendy was ranting to herself, seemingly trying to find something in her botany setup. "Where the fuck are ya cunt?" she groaned. Davo answered, "Well, great, Paul. That's just perfect. We'll be there tonight. Do you have somewhere we can park our dilapidated bee store?" "Yes, I have a large garage, not to worry," answered Lumiere firmly. And then some crashing sounds afterwards, and Lumiere said, "I think Wendy needs a hand with something, so we'll see you tonight. I'll give you each an apartment on the 7th floor. I think they have big rooms, but I'm not sure." Lumiere then went to try and help Wendy with whatever she was doing. "Are you all right, Wendy?" he asked, still on the phone. "Get away from my setup, you great immortal dunce," she replied, clearly out of it. Lumiere hung up the phone. "We're sorted, mate. Good shit," exclaimed Cranford to Davo, who seemed pleased if albeit a bit concerned. "Yeah, mate. Just remember this guy's a character I don't need to fuck around with." "Oh, he seems nice enough," replied Cranford. "He didn't try to kill me when I blasted him with my shotty, so you know." Yeah, we'll see, replied Davo. And the two drove their now severely beaten up, essential oil stinking RV towards Lumiere's building, which Lumiere had sent the location of in a text. They pulled up to the building. Jesus Christ, right in the business district, said Davo, noticing the empty storefront at the bottom of the building. At that moment, Wendy popped out of the large front doors. She had been waiting for them by the lobby window. She walked up to the window of the RV. Looks like the hippies fucked you boys too, huh? Yeah, Wildcat. Yeah, muttered Davo. Where do I park this thing? He asked. Hi, Wendy, said Cranford, waving his hand in the passenger seat. Can you believe this Lumiere cunt owns this whole building and it's fucking empty except for his penthouse and he didn't tell me? Said Wendy in a shocked tone. No. Is that so? Replied Davo. Anyways, I'm getting my own apartment and lab in here too, just like you boys. Fuck being this prick's secretary, she laughed. Davo laughed. Well, of course. See that empty storefront? I'm gonna convince him to let me start a brand new head shop and sell every new analog known to man and not fucking known to man. And hey, listen, if you're here, we can even sell whatever you want to make under the table. Maybe some of that meteor DMT. I mean, fuck Davo. I'm still reeling and dealing from that now. Everything was so multicolored and iridescent, I felt like I was somewhere else a few times. Iridescent? You see any cats? Asked Cranford. Davo sighed heavily. No, I don't think so, Cranford mate, replied Wendy. So what do you think? She asked Davo. Sounds great, Wildcat, but you'll need his permission. And we'll need security with all the hippies around and, big circle and all that. Anyway, where do we park this thing? Wendy led the two into the garage. Lumiere was in there waiting to greet them inside. How could you not tell me you own the whole fucking building? You're fucking rich as shit, mate, exclaimed Wendy to Lumiere as Cranford and Davo parked the RV in the garage. Oh well, thought we were slumber buddies, remarked Lumiere. Right, except I haven't seen you sleep a wink in the past week, retorted Wendy, and peered her eyes at him. At that moment, a young lad, the same young lad Lumiere had saved from ransom weeks ago, burst into the garage looking for Lumiere to report to him. Hello, Otto, said Lumiere to the lad. Who the fuck is this? Asked Wendy. Otto, remarked Lumiere, and smiled a large needle-tooth grin towards Wendy and then towards Otto and scruffed his hair. Otto's here to make sure everything's in order, right, Otto? Lumiere gestured toward Otto. Otto piped up. Yes, sir. The Big Circle Clubhouse has been hit by me, Kira, and Elvis. They shouldn't be breaking in again anytime soon, and I've reinforced your door and fixed the elevator. That man, Winston, broke, revenue is up, but our stock is going down. Stock? You have stock, Lumiere? Asked Wendy in disbelief. Fuck. Yeah, it looks like it, retorted Lumiere and laughed. Otto laughed too and said, everything is in order. Wendy looked at the two, bewildered. At that moment, Cranford and Davo walked up to the three, and Lumiere took Otto aside and told him, listen, we've got some new chemists or pharmacists or something, whatever. They're coming to work for us here and move into the building. You're letting people move into the empty levels now? Asked Otto, confused. Lumiere was confused by his confusion and stated, yes, this is Cranford and this is Davo, he said, gesturing to the two. Davo squinted at Otto, and Cranford stood tall, bulky, and bumbling, taking in the magnitude of Lumiere's garage. Otto perked up. Right, I suppose I'll show you to some, he stammered. Take him to the 7th floor. I was exploring around it the other day. It's all large apartments. Exploring, scoffed Wendy. And Wendy, I overheard you want your own apartment too. You go along with them, said Lumiere. Wendy chuckled with pursed lips. Don't mind if I do, she replied. All right, new tenants, follow me, barked the young Otto and led the... Here's part 18. Davo Cranford move in, kept word for word in your draft, just formatted for read back. Wendy chuckled with pursed lips. Don't mind if I do, she replied. All right, new tenants, follow me, barked the young Otto and led the three into the elevator. Lumiere followed and pressed 11 to his penthouse, while Otto pressed 7, and they ascended up Lumiere's building. Otto showed the three each to their own large suite-style apartment and noted a large common area, which could be used as both a makeshift botany lab and makeshift pharmaceutical lab until they had something more substantial figured out. The three each settled into their new apartments, Wendy bringing her things down from Lumiere's apartment, and Davo and Cranford bringing theirs from their RV. Cranford took a relatively small corner nook room, slightly more dilapidated than the rest, while Wendy and Davo each took the largest rooms next to one another at one side of the floor, and the three set up their various equipment and workspaces in the common room. Cranford took some of the cache of meteorite fragments that the hippies had miraculously managed not to steal secretly that night from the RV, while Davo wandered the various floors of the building, trying to take in Lumiere's awe and trying to find anything of interest. Cranford took the elevator to the 10th floor, which was dilapidated and empty, paint stripping, bad smells, leaking, and rat infested. He wandered to an empty corner and began to set up his big plan. Part 19. Jera. A day before Cranford was about to enact his plan, Marcus was in the city. Marcus had run out of product after a busy day serving customers. He grabbed his phone and video called Cuthbert. Hey, Cuss, I need to re-up. Where you at? Marcus asked casually, like any other day. Paul's place, mate. Everything's here. Come up, Cuthbert replied, glancing over his shoulder. Still? What are you, moving in or what? Marcus asked, frowning. Actually, yes, Cuthbert said with a smirk. I'm selling that shithole and taking an apartment downstairs. Wouldn't you know it? He owns the whole goddamn building, and it's empty. Anyway, I'll fill you in when you get here. I'm in his penthouse with him now. He turned the camera, showing Lumiere sitting beside him, smoking a cigarette. Lumiere exhaled a long plume of smoke directly at the lens, flashing his needle-sharp teeth as he smiled and gave a small wave. Marcus shuddered and quickly hung up. Fouar, he muttered, gripping his brow. The tower loomed over the skyline as Marcus approached, its shadow stretching across the street like it could swallow the world whole. He buzzed the intercom for 1127. Lumiere's voice answered, calm and measured. Hello, Marcus. Please, come up. Cuthbert is waiting for you. In the background, Marcus could hear raised voices. Come on, Wendy. This'll make bank on the street, Cuthbert shouted. It's for the shop, you idiot, not your half-wit operation. Isn't my red beard enough? Wendy snapped. Lumiere's voice returned, slightly muffled. Now, my friends. Why do we fight? His last words echoed faintly as the door buzzed open. In the elevator, Marcus leaned against the wall, shaking his head. A shop? There's going to be a shop. Then? That sounds so much easier. He smirked at the thought, the possibilities already forming in his mind. Marcus knocked on Lumiere's door, and after 2 knocks, Lumiere answered and gave Marcus a closed smile and said somewhat warmly in a way that felt almost off, Marcus, please. He gestured Marcus in to enter, as he did. Wendy stormed out of the apartment, bumping past Marcus and taking the elevator downstairs, holding a huge bag filled with plants matter. Hey, Wendy. Marcus stammered. Out of my way, exclaimed Wendy in a huff. As the elevator doors were closing, Cuthbert ran up to Lumiere's door and pleaded to her, Come on, Darl, I'm sorry. It seemed as though he was trying hard to sound genuine, but not quite pulling it off. Fuck off, Wendy barked as the elevator closed. Damn, Cuth, what'd you do? Laughed Marcus, confused. Our Cuthbert is a thief, said Lumiere, patting Cuthbert on the back and looking into his eyes with an eerie grin. Cuthbert squinted at Lumiere and looked at Marcus. His eyes were heavily bloodshot and pupils fully dilated. Jesus, what are you on, Cuss? Asked Marcus, sounding genuinely concerned. Wendy's narcotic prototype. I tried some, without asking. Now she's mad, replied Cuthbert, some kind of stoned and trailing off. Anyway, products in the drawer. Help yourself. Cuthbert gestured to an ornate drawer by the door, and the three walked inside, Lumiere closing the door behind them. Cuthbert lay on the couch, eyes half open, while Marcus weighed up on the table. Lumiere walked in, his arms crossed, and exclaimed, An assassin and a thief. Marcus perked up from what he was doing. Assassin? He asked Cuthbert, perplexed in shock. Lumiere laughed. You'd be a real lowlife if you hadn't have taken out a big fucking pedo. Damn it, Lumiere. Lumiere! asked Marcus, unable to understand. You did a hit on a pedo, Cuthbert. What? When? Who's giving you contracts now? He asked, a mix of impressed and concerned. Cuthbert sighed heavily and slumped his feet onto the floor, head in his lap. Didi Moncler. Fuck is that? Asked Marcus. Didi Moncler, it's called fucking. Didi Moncler, all right, I didn't want you to know. Cuthbert sighed and brought his head up. I'll explain it to you, but you do something for me first. Visit Wendy and the boys downstairs and see if you can convince her to let us move her new narcotic. Prototype or not. Come on, finish weighing up. Yeah, all right, Cuth, I'll try, replied Marcus and finished his business and headed to the door. Oh, and watch out for the big one. Cranford can be Abbott off the rails, warned Cuthbert. Old bloke's all right. Davo, 7th floor. Got it, replied Marcus and took the elevator downstairs. As Marcus went down the elevator, he wondered what the fuck the name Didi Moncler represented and blew raspberries as the elevator doors opened. He stepped into a fully set up chemistry and botany lab with a decent amount of equipment. He recognized the botany equipment from retrieving it for Wendy with Pagan and Kimmy. Suddenly, he felt a huge hand grab his collar and scruff him. Who are you? Asked the man gruffly. You must be Cranford, right? Asked Marcus innocently. Clutching Cranford's arm, getting ready to try an impossible MMA move on this giant, Cranford yelled out, Oi, intruder! Jesus Christ, Cuthbert, muttered Wendy and went back into being focused on her work. Davo sighed heavily and did the same. Cranford loomed over Marcus, still scruffing him, and Marcus laughed nervously, unsure what to do. At that moment, the elevator doors reopened and Lumiere entered the lab. Let him go, Cranford, he said calmly, gazing into Cranford's eyes. Cranford let go immediately and staggered back and turned around, back to his station with Davo, tail between his legs. Marcus turned and looked at Lumiere, impressed but confused. This guy could stomp Lumiere, but he was terrified. At the moment he looked at his white eyes, he felt himself getting sucked inside them and quickly looked away, and in that moment he somewhat understood. Lumiere gestured Marcus toward Wendy. Marcus nodded and walked up to her, working intently over a table of writhing plants, spraying them with a spray bottle. As she did, each spray made the affected part of the plant morph and mutate slightly, the whole mass writhing slightly. Wendy sighed and looked at Marcus. What is it, big boy? If you're asking me to let your little boss sell this new analog, you're shit out of luck. They're going to be a staple of our business. Good business. An exclusive new release. No early trials. Got me? Marcus took in the answer, but was curious about the shop. Lumiere interjected. Now, Wendy, how are you expecting to open a store in my storefront when you're on the run from these hippies? They're after all three of us. You, me, Cuthbert, but mostly you. They think it was all your idea. Even if they don't know it's you running it, they're going to attack a big new synthetic drugstore anyway. For competition. Do you have some sort of plan? There was a pause, and Wendy stared at her plants, defeated by Lumiere's words, and muttered quietly almost to herself. Jera? We need Jera. We need protection. An army? And then returned to spraying her writhing plants. Who's Jera? Asked Marcus. Part 20. The Cat and the Pixie. At this time, Lumiere had been managing to save face, but he had been consistently vomiting black, feather, and broken eyeball-filled bile about once a day. He kept his secret from everyone around him, except for Cuthbert, who stumbled onto Lumiere, vomiting into his toilet while hanging out at Lumiere's apartment. Jesus, mate, Cuthbert said, putting on an accusatory tone. You're not meant to do this kind of shit. Lumiere wiped his lips and stared into the toilet bowl, the broken irises and pupils staring back at him and Cuthbert before he flushed them down the toilet. I don't understand, Cuthbert. I have no memories of ever throwing up. These last few weeks are the first times it's ever happened to me, to what I can recall, fucking ever. Since I smoked your mate Winston's cigars, or maybe since I started the Mercy contracts with Didi Moncler. But I don't get it. And what I'm vomiting, it's alive. There's something inside me, Cuthbert, trying to come out. I don't understand. I'm meant to be fucking untouchable. Winston. Eh? You gotta watch out for him, Lumi. He works with Malachi, my old foster dad, a real sick fuck. Wouldn't say the guy would pass up the opportunity to strangle a kitten for a $20 note, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't be surprised if they did this to you on purpose. Something in the cigars, methinks. Those cunts are gonna have to pay. Let's not jump to conclusions, said Lumiere. When I met Winston, he seemed like a solid bloke. I mean, he did break into my apartment, but it was just because he knew about my first Mercy contracts through his work and wanted to congratulate me. Cuthbert retorted. That's the thing with these agency cunts, Lumi. They drill into your head, make you think everything's A-okay. They're probably trying to steal your, untouchableness. Lumiere began to heave again, this time more dramatically than ever before. Oh God, what the fuck is happening? Exclaimed Lumiere, writhing on the floor, clutching the ground. Easy, mate, said Cuthbert, calmly patting his back, unsure what else to do. Lumiere lifted his collared, white, tattered shirt. His stomach was convulsing like a pregnant woman's if the baby started breakdancing. It was making its way up to his chest. Lumiere was in hysterics. He still felt no real pain, but this was so out of the norm he couldn't handle it. He felt so sick and nauseous in a way he could never have described or remembered before. The lump made its way to his throat. Lumiere started making uncontrollable choking sounds as something the size of a baseball forced itself up his throat. Jesus, ease up, Buttercup, muttered Cuthbert in disbelief. At that moment, Lumiere vomited a black bile-covered ball, slightly larger than a baseball, with an appendage connected to it, a tiny human foot about the size of a bread roll. At first, the bile-covered thing lay limp on the ground. Then a circular mouth opened on the ball, needle-like teeth lining it in rows identical to Lumiere's. Once Lumiere vomited the ball with its leg and foot, he instantly felt cured of his sickness, as though a great weight had been lifted. The mouth opened and closed, and slowly but surely, one after the other, eyes started to blink open across the ball. It stood shakily on its one leg, like a newborn giraffe. Cuthbert simply began laughing maniacally. Well, yes, sir. That's about right, he howled, laughing so hard he nearly pissed himself. What the fuck, bud? What? Lumiere exclaimed. Oh my God, mate. I feel so much better. Everything is clear now. Even whatever the fuck this is. Cuthbert was keeled over, back to the wall, laughing uncontrollably. Lumiere held out his hand. The creature jumped onto his palm and began licking his face like an excited puppy, covered in eyeballs, with the worm mouth of needle teeth, as though Lumiere were its mother. Fucking Jesus, all right? Exclaimed Lumiere. Let's get you cleaned up. Cuthbert let out another burst of unhinged laughter. Lumiere ran the bile-covered creature under his ornate sink, revealing bright red skin and 2 sets of angel wings folded tightly against its body. When Lumiere finished washing it, he held it up into the light. It spread its 4 angel wings and began buzzing around the room like a sparrow mixed with a drone. Cuthbert's laughter turned to screams of terror. At that moment, Wendy barged in. What the fuck is going on in here? We can hear you laughing through the pipes on the 7th floor. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at Lumiere, holding the winged, one-legged creature in his hand, watching it buzz around the ornate bathroom. What in fuckstick's fucking name? Exclaimed Wendy. Is that? Lumiere turned to Wendy and Cuthbert, holding the creature firmly by the foot. Would you look at that, guys? I made a pixie! Cuthbert stopped making any noise. Wendy did the same. Both stared, gobsmacked. The night was thick with smoke, the stale stench of cigarettes hanging heavy in Cranford's tiny, cluttered apartment inside Lumiere's building. The glow of a flickering lamp cast trembling shadows across graffiti-covered walls, stacks of half-empty takeout boxes, and scattered meteor fragments glowing faintly like dying embers. Cranford sat cross-legged on the stained carpet, staring at the pieces he'd assembled. A teacup pig trembling in the corner, meteor shards arranged in precise geometric shapes, and a ragdoll effigy sewn with mismatched buttons for eyes. His hands were steady, almost reverent, as he painted symbols in blood across the floor, sharp angles, spirals, strange repeating patterns. He remembered the cultist's movements like a movie replaying in his head. The way the man whispered words Cranford didn't understand. The flick of his wrist as he painted sigils on the earth. The moment the light emerged from nothingness and coalesced into the iridescent cat. Cranford's voice shook as he muttered words he barely understood, syllables spilling from his lips like broken glass. The pig squealed. Cranford's gaze snapped to it, sharp, cold. Shut up! He was sweating now, eyes bloodshot and wide as he repeated the incantations. The meteor shards began to hum, a low vibration that rattled his chest cavity, his teeth. The blood-painted symbols began to glow faintly, threads of light seeping upward. Cranford picked up a rusty knife, his reflection warped in the tarnished steel. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from reverence. I need to see it again. I have to see it again. In one swift motion, he pressed the blade against the pig's throat. The squeal was sharp, piercing, then silence. Blood spilled onto the meteor shards and symbols below, hissing faintly. For a split second, nothing happened. Cranford's breath caught in his throat. His eyes darted across the circle.